Hello, and welcome to episode 1 of The Business of the Starving Artist with Hayden Woods. In this podcast series, we're going to be looking to get any self-employed individual, not just starving artists or creatives, but my line of music, my line of work is in music. I'm leaving that in. So I'm more geared towards the creative individuals, but a lot of these things will still work for anyone that's working to be self-sufficient. For the visual people, there's a little notepad thing where they can see all the things that I'm going to be talking about, but we'll kind of go through it together. The idea is that we're going to talk about my business, how I started, some of the highs and a lot of the lows, figuring out where I'm at now and what's going to happen going forward, and then getting a game plan started for your own business, and then we'll talk about some of the future things that are going to happen. So, again, as a disclaimer, I'm a musician and a music teacher. So a lot of the experiences that I have are going to be focused around music and music teachers. We can take some of these things and gear it towards the other areas, but a lot of the examples that will be provided are going to be through my own business. So let's dive into the history of my music teaching business. For this, we need to go to 2018, to May 5th, the day essentially after graduating with a Bachelor of Arts in Music. I already knew, at the very least, I've already had the plan of I want to teach music lessons by the time I graduated. There was no, what do I do now? Like, it can happen, because what ends up happening in a lot of these creative fields is that we learn our craft and we figure out what it is that we want to do, but we don't learn the business side of what it is that we want to do. As a trombone player, yes, I'm expected to be able to play an instrument. As a music teacher, I'm expected to teach lessons, or as a conductor, I'm expected to wave a stick in front of a group. But I'm never taught about how to, or I was never really taught how to run the business side of all of this. So a lot of these lessons that I had to learn were learned the hard way. Let's start with the very beginning. Again, after graduation, the goal was to teach lessons. So how do we get lessons? Well, we got to market ourselves and get out there and be able to actually say, hey, I'm over here, I teach lessons. So where do we do that? For me, the first thing was those flyers that have the little cutout tabs, and just post those up in a couple public areas, and especially like the 2 music stores. And that worked for a few students to start off with, but needless to say, the first year was nothing like I was expecting. And I don't mean that in the best way, because I was hoping that I would put something up, I would get lessons going, and then boom, they're all right there. It's not how it works. How it works is you got to put yourself out there, and you really have to grind out the marketing side, the I'm over here side, to get those lessons. And within only 1 year, I only had 3 consistent students and a few that kind of hopped in and out of lessons, kind of figuring out if they wanted to do that or not. So if we couple that with a bunch of financial mistakes, like leaning on credit cards to finish school, like leaning on credit cards to pay for the power bill, to pay for food, for gas, for a business that wasn't as quick to grow as I had hoped, and then couple that again with the mental health state that I was at, not just because of the slow to grow business, but because of a lot of past history things that we're going to not dive into right now. Needless to say, it was just bad. You can see it if you're a visual listener on the bad money, bad mentality, just bad. It was bad. And I didn't at first, or like for the first 3 months, I didn't have a stable job. The music lessons, I was like, all right, I'm riding or I'm going to die. And it didn't come off that way. What happened then is I ended up taking a job doing cleaning stuff to try to stabilize where I was at. But when you work a job like that at nighttime and your business isn't really taking off like you hoped it would, there's just a lot of mental gymnastics that took place. And for me, it meant I needed to mental gymnastics my way out of, to keep it short, out of being an alcoholic, out of being depressed, out of a lot of things. And at the very least, it was the kick in the butt I needed, because it allowed me to become more clear on what it is and how it is that I needed to make this work. So from that point, I'm not going to give away too many details on the date or the nature of it all, but basically from a certain point in 2019, in January, decisions were made. The credit got put on a consolidation plan, which as of last November is complete. So I've been out of debt like that for almost a year now. I quit drinking because that kind of was me burying a lot of my past traumas that didn't help me actually become a better teacher or even a better person. It kind of made me a depressing nightmare to exist around sometimes. So getting off of that and getting therapy and all that helps mentally. Because of the mental help and getting the finances back on track, I can now refocus back on getting the business up and running for real. And by for real, I mean let's have more than 3 students. Thankfully, by the fall of 2019, that did mean getting up to 15 students. Now, for me, that was the threshold at the time to survive. I still needed the other job, but it allowed me to survive long enough to be able to continue building on that and not have to panic so much about the bills getting paid. And actually, I think by that point, I was also substitute teaching. So I had my day job, my business, and then my night job in order to make this work. And it did. And by about, I want to say September or October of 2019, I was able to quit the cleaning job and stay with the more relevant substitute teaching job, but take that substitute money as my extra money. I could lean on the lessons as my primary source of income and then substitute teach when I felt like it or when I felt like I wanted to have the extra money. And things were going good. And then the pandemic happened. Or as the Game Grumps call it, the Backstreet Boys reunion tour. Anyway, the pandemic opened up a whole new can of, well, how am I going to make this work? And I honestly think that because of the steps I took before the pandemic and getting things stabilized, I think that was critical in still being around. The shutdown happened and we had to figure out how this was going to survive. Obviously, there's things like teaching online lessons. And I see a lot of people do this, and I need to get comfortable with it. Hence, kind of doing this podcast as a way to get comfortable with sitting in a room by myself and talking at a camera or looking at my computer screen or just trying to figure out how that works. So if it looks awkward, it is. It's just how we learn. But teaching the online lessons, which I did a few in the beginning of the shutdown, and what I had come to realize is that a lot of, especially the younger students, have a really hard time focusing at these lessons. It's like they'll play for a little bit and then they'll run away. And then they'll come back and then they'll play for a little bit and then they'll run away again. Or there was one where we ended up recording or having them record their lesson, send it to me, or like the music that they were working on, and then I would send back a feedback lesson on what they did right, what could be improved, and try to demonstrate some of these things. It's not the same. It is not the same as being able to either have them come to the studio, but because I work from home, I drive to all of these lessons. So I go out to their houses and I teach from there, and that has been much more successful, regardless of pandemic or not. In person for me has so far been way more successful. It would be nice to be able to take some online students because, again, my daytime is not full. There's plenty of room for daytime lessons or even different time zone lessons, but we'll get to that here in a second. So in trying to use this online tool, it didn't quite work. But luckily, there was the I'm just going to say it. It was a little excessive, but it helped, and it definitely helped me. The unemployment. The unemployment definitely helped, and I think because I was working as a substitute teacher at the time, that did allow me to get it sooner than other self-employed colleagues because the whole system had to figure out what it was going to be doing anyway. But by being able to take that, still trying to work on some lesson stuff, it allowed me a chance to kind of regroup again, help pay off the credit card thing, paid off the car, get invested, get saved so that there's enough of a financial net that I don't have to worry about it. But then it allowed for the post-pandemic phase to kick in. Basically, when everyone could go back to school or to work, it basically reinforced, at least in my community in Bozeman, Montana, it reinforced the desire for the arts, the desire for music, and the desire for music lessons. And as a result, the 2020 fall time gave me kind of the current level that I'm teaching at right now, which is around 25 to 28 students at one time. I would say about this time last year, there was a peak of about 30, but I mean, I'm at a point right now where I don't need to worry about how many students I need because I have that and then some. And I have this safety net in case something happens. And if I really needed to, I could go back to substitute teaching certain days just to shore up anything. But it allowed me to see that what I was doing, and even to this day, what I am doing, is working. It's working a little too well, to the point where if I have a full schedule and there's still a need for lessons, I can't fill those times because they're already booked. So either I need to hire another teacher or I need to give someone else recommendations, but in a way that kind of helps me keep growing my own business as well. Trying to work on, again, as part of the adaptability, daytime lessons I can use for the homeschool family. And there was last fall, 2022, we tried a homeschool band. It didn't quite work the way that I was hoping it would. The interest was there vocally, but then when it came time to actually have people show up, and then with a lot of other scheduling things, it just made it difficult. So it's a trial and error. And I mean, again, that's what this podcast is going to be, a trial and error run of seeing what works and what doesn't. So it would be good to figure out the future plan. at least for me, it would be the future plan. This podcast, any online courses. If I go, again, for my visual people, if I click on my browser, it goes right to my website, heywoods-music.com. It's going to change. Think I'm going to take the winter break, which is usually about 2 weeks, and I'm going to rebuild my website. It would be nice to do some online courses. And I mean, I had a few ideas. They don't quite work they don't work right now because I haven't done anything with them. I would like to build an auditions course. I would like to build kind of what this podcast is going to be. So this one's going to go away in favor of just podcasting it, or be able to offer lessons online, or be able to write more music. But you can see a lot of the things that I would do. And I mean, it's not just, again, part of being able to adapt is being able to be versatile in your field. So I do lessons, obviously, but I also do some composition and arranging or performing, whether it's with a big band or a local city group or the musical, or I'll do some guitar maintenance stuff, or I'll do audio-visual recording and editing. This picture's outdated because I have rearranged this office a number of times. But yeah, there's plenty to do to be able to make this work. But again, this podcast isn't just to talk about what I've done, it's to get you started on your self-employment path. Again, mostly on experience of the creatives, but I've also got plenty of experience advising others within the self-employment role, such as helping my sister with her cleaning business. Be like, okay, this is what we do. Sometimes I have to be a little backwards about it because of the fact that she has kids. So it depends on the situation, but there is experience there too. So if we're going to get started with your own business, we need to devise the plan. Again, I'm using my music teaching as an example. It's going to be different for everyone. But my plan was very not fleshed out. It was, I'm going to teach music lessons and I'm going to charge this much an hour or half hour. I've learned that half-hour lessons are the way to go for a lot of families. The focus is better and the quality of the lessons is much better as well. But that was it. There was no, okay, how am I going to get myself out there? Where am I going to do this? How many students do I need? Whatnot. So that's what we need to figure out. What are you going to do? How are you going to put yourself out there for that? How much are you going to charge for it? How often is it going to be? And then how are you going to scale it from there? So let's start with the music lesson side. And actually, for something like this, I'm going to open a new notepad for my visual people. Okay, so we need to build a plan. Start with the what do I want to do for work? Again, for me, it was teach music lessons and perform in various groups. Okay. Hayden Woods-Music. Boom. That's what the mission is. Short, sweet, to the point. You can expand on it later, but we need to get the ideas down first. Okay. So now we need to ask, how much do I need to survive? That depends on your area and your various living situations. If I go to, let me do it this way. There we go. Look at that visual change on that website. If I go to my budget, because I'm old-fashioned and like spreadsheets, I've got everything allocated on one side, and we're in the month of October, so I'm in this column. So right now, I need $1139.72. But what I'm going to do instead, let me expand this real quick. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to highlight every single month, and this includes some estimated totals. It's not exact, so I will probably round it up. On average, oh, you can't even see that. Let me get rid of my face. Okay, right down here in the corner is the average, about $1,084. This budget doesn't include gas and bills, so I'm going to add an extra like $400 to it and then round up from there. So I'm going to say I need about $1,500 a month to survive. And my situation is that I don't live by myself. I'm living in a house where I've been for over 9 years now, so my rent is good for where we're at. But if I were to move, I would see a massive increase in rent, which would then put an extra strain on or add an extra amount to how much I would need to survive. So I'm at $1,500 a month. I asked that first before I figure out how many clients I need. And again, this just depends on the individual because there's a lot of things that go into this. Your numbers could be higher or lower depending on your living situation. For those who do like physical media, you might need more for supplies to actually make the works and go from there. So you'll have to figure that out. But using this as a guideline, how many clients, or for, again, physical media, how many products do I need to make this happen? So if you're a service-based one, how many clients do you need each month, perhaps consistently, in order to make that money? For physical products, how much of said product do you need to sell after all your expenses? If so, for $1,500 a month, I charge at the moment $30 for a half-hour lesson. It used to be $25, and then I raised the rate just because, again, cost of living. And I did have a family reach out, and that'll be the second episode that said that I need to charge more anyway. So we'll talk about finding your value there. But for me, I was like, okay, $30 for half an hour is reasonable for the area. And this was done through research and talking with colleagues and, again, seeing what the market demand is for that. So I guess that's the total number of lessons per month. So I'm going to divide it by 4. So this is how many students I need each week, every week, to survive. So I need, in this case, 12 weeklies and one biweekly. I don't have too many biweeklies because it does get difficult for scheduling. For the daytime, it's a little bit easier because, again, if it's a homeschool family, I can work with that. If it's an after-school family, that makes it a little harder because that's the prime time for my business to get lessons. So that's what I would need. Now, currently, I have 28 students. 3 of them are biweekly, but 25 are weekly. So needless to say, I'm out of the surviving phase and into more of the thriving phase. And I would like to expand that thriving phase through various things. This podcast, online courses, blah, blah, blah. So I figured that out. How do I get my name out there? With an E. So how do we get our names out there and get known? When I started the business, it was only through physical flyers in public areas. For, again, the artists or photographers, I go into like any coffee shop or restaurant, and there's a good chance at least for the local areas, that you'll see these arts up on the walls, up for sale, whether it's photography or painting, or I've seen some wood-based pictures where they just layer it on to create the image of like either the Grand Tetons or Old Faithful at Yellowstone Park. So that would be your way to do that. But physical flyers helps for like the service side of things. And when I started that business, that was the only way I did it. And that's where I failed to build up fast enough, was because I only did local in-person areas. The next year, I worked on Facebook groups. So again, where I live in Bozeman, Montana, there's plenty of classified pages where I can post and check the rules to make sure that it's allowed. But at least for most of the pages in my area, it's allowed to put services up on the for sale section so that you can gain these clients. And that's where I've seen the most success out of it. The Facebook group thing is free. The physical flyers thing, it would cost a little bit, obviously, for paper or ink or going to a print shop. I prefer to just print it at home. It is what it is. Obviously, business cards help for, like, if you get clients and you want them to recommend to other clients, you do it that way. That works too. I've done signage outside of my house. That's only worked for one household. And I mean, they're not students anymore. I had them for about a year and a half. But it's one of those things where I wanted the tax deduction on advertising, so I bought a sign. I also bought car magnets, so the teachers at the college see that I'm out and about driving around teaching these lessons. I got told I was, I guess I'm really good at marketing for all of that. So that's where all of those things come in. But again, these kind of things, it all depends on what you want to do for your field. If I use my sister's example, she took it down, but there used to be a Facebook page, which obviously a lot of businesses do that. You could build one of those. I have a creator page on Facebook essentially for my stuff, but I don't use it. I probably should, and perhaps if this takes off, I will, but there's that option. And again, there's just going in person. Like, I know that there's some coffee shops that were interested, or some local businesses that saw the work and recommended it, or even friends or family help out. I've gotten a couple that way too. My sister was really good about posting my name all over anyone asking for lessons. So credit where credit is due. These are all the things to get your name out there. So the next step then, after all of this done, and you start seeing the clients come in, it's like, how do you execute these? Where are you going to do this? Where do I do this? Again, physical media, probably in your own studio. For me, with the house that am in right now, it doesn't provide an ideal teaching spot unless it wants to be in the living room, in the public area of the house. So what I end up doing is I drive to every single lesson. All 28 of them, I drive to them, which adds an extra cost, which is why I added money for the gas side of things, because driving is expensive now. But you can take it off on your taxes every year as long as you do it right. I'm not a licensed tax advisor, but look into it. Do your due diligence. So, but see, because I drive to every single lesson, I've seen that success because the parents like that I will go to them rather than they have to come to me. Because then it removes the equation of, they might be late, because I like to leave extremely early for the things I'm going to do. Like I have a 4 o'clock lesson. I'm probably going to leave my house at 3. I could get there by 3:30, but I'm just going to kind of either drive around town or get an errand done or anything like that. So that's the where I'm doing this. Next, how do we get paid? In the beginning, I was exclusively cash or check because, again, slow start, and I was a little stubborn on, again, using technology. We love our phones, don't we? Sorry. I used checks and cash because for me at the time it was easiest for getting started. But since then I have added Venmo and like Venmo, PayPal, Zelle. So figuring out a digital way to collect money can be faster as far as getting paid. Because then it's a lot more people are using it now. So I can just go, hey, here's the code, scan it, send me the amount, we're good. And it works especially well for any clients that maybe aren't in your local area. So you're not waiting for a check or something to come in the mail because sometimes, and at least this is my experience, the mail is struggling. In our area, we are at a point where they're not delivering every day, and it's because they don't have the people to do the job. So by using Venmo, I get that kind of money right away, and then I can put it in the bank right away. And it helps with tracking that income for tax time, so you're not having to shuffle through all kinds of bank statements or try to log every single little thing down. You're going to have to track any cash or check options, obviously, because that shows up. But for Venmo, it's already done for you. So I go cash, check, Venmo / PayPal. Oops. PayPal / Zelle. I don't use Zelle as match. / whatever other app is out there that works for that. So that's how you get paid for it. These are the steps that you have to take to get started. And I mean, again, learning it the hard way, I probably would be in an even better position if I had just taken the time to do all of this right away. So if you can take the time to do that, even like if you're in school right now and you're getting close to graduating and you want to do this, start building your plan now so that when you graduate, you can hit the ground running and you can go for it. Again, keep in mind, it may be a slow start. That's just how it works because you have to start from scratch. And I mean, even if there comes a time where like the girlfriend graduates and she finds a job somewhere else and we move, I'm going to have to start from ground zero. But knowing what I know now, it's going to be easier to get started. And perhaps even if I move somewhere else, maybe I try to take some online lessons with me so that I have some kind of a stable income while I'm building a new, or I guess a renewed business in a new location. So we've devised a very basic plan. We've talked about, again, getting the name out there for the marketability. The hardest part now is to get out there and do it because this is where, again, I felt the strain of a slow start. You have to keep going with it, regardless of whether it succeeds right away or not. And again, in most cases, it's not a clear-cut, boom, there you are. If I go back to the music example, even with auditioning for a professional group, you have to butcher so many auditions before you even get one like really successful audition, unless you're really, really lucky. I tried auditioning for the Air Force Band, and it was my first post-college audition, and I had no business being there because I had no idea how to audition properly. And I mean, on my website, I have a course that I was trying to build on how to audition a little more properly, thinking about various things. I don't know, like don't listen to anyone else right now at the audition because you'll get intimidated, or again, just make sure you know your material so well that you can't get it wrong. So there were a few auditions to butcher. There were some successful auditions in the mix, thankfully. There was a successful audition for grad school. There we go. I can talk. C student in English. But I chose not to go because I wanted the assistantship side. And while I got into the school, I didn't get the assistantship. So I'm like, all right, then I'll just keep doing what I'm doing because this works. This worked for me. And if you can get the grind and you can get the plan executed, then you too can actually get out of starving and into surviving. On our future episodes, I've already got a few ideas for what we're going to do. Like, we're going to talk about, probably in episode 2, finding your value because of a text I got earlier this week about not charging enough for my lessons. And it had me thinking, I was like, do I need to raise my rates? So we'll talk about that. We'll figure out how you find your value within your area. We'll talk about the wonderful, magical land of good old finances and all the mistakes that, again, I made along the way that you should try to avoid if you can. Some things are just inevitable, but it is what it is. We'll also have some moments where we talk about, we'll have like a Q&A, or like if you pose a question that warrants a full episode, we'll do that. Otherwise, maybe once in a while, we'll just have a Q&A episode where I look through and find all the questions to do that. With that said, I want to give you guys a big thanks for joining me on this inaugural episode that I tried to record about 16 or 17 times. And the last time I tried to record this, I almost made it to the end and just butchered so badly that I scrapped the entire thing and started over. Because, again, starting a podcast and getting a new avenue of the business going is tough. It's really hard, especially when you're trying to figure out what to do and find your voice. So if you tolerated, if you liked or tolerated, or at least stuck with us to the end, I want to give you my thanks. If you could subscribe, comment, all that lovely YouTube-y streaming type things that they ask you to do. It helps, I guess. I'm going to find out. I would rather try to plug, again, leaving the questions, if any, for any future episodes down wherever you can. To plug my tip jars over in my editing. I'm going to figure this out. Over on... There we go. Ha-ha! Getting it. Over on that side of the whole screen, for the visual listeners, you'll probably see my Venmo or my PayPal, just because I need gas money so I can drive to all these lessons that I'm teaching. But it would help out immensely to be able to keep trying this medium out, see where it goes, see if it goes anywhere. And I mean, again, if it doesn't, it's going to be a good lesson in what works, what doesn't, maybe how do I do something different each time, and how do we adapt to the listener. So with that, thank you. I don't have a good ending tagline yet. That's being workshopped. I don't even know if the title of this podcast is going to stay the same, because it was between that or Conversations for the Starving Artist. Tell you what, leave a comment on which title you like better, Conversations for the Starving Artist or The Business of the Starving Artist. And perhaps when I figure out when these launch and when I figure out which one works better, I might just re-record, or not re-record. I might dub over it to fix it to the other side. Oh God, hi cat. All right, here's the co-host. It's the business of the starving artist with Hayden and his cat Troy. All right, that's enough fooling around. Let's end it here. Thank you so much for watching or listening. Until next time.